What's up guys, 2K here, and today I'm going to be doing a quick overview. Well, I don't know how quick it'll be, but I want to say generally a non-audiophile take of both the Sennheiser HD560S and the Sound Blaster Audigy FX, and yes or no, get your laughs in now, audiophiles, if any of you guys are watching. But the first thing I want to say is I would not have bought these if it wasn't for buying these. Um, and just to give you guys a quick reference into why I don't really consider myself an audiophile, even though I do appreciate good sound, I would consider myself, if an audiophile, a very beginner audiophile, um, because I'm just getting into the world of, hi-fi audio, high fidelity audio, and really what it takes or what you need in order to get high fidelity audio, or at least better audio than what your onboard sound can provide for you. Um, and like I said, you might be wondering, well, how does a sound card purchase lead to a headphone purchase? Well, the long story short of it is that my cheap garbage Realtek ALC 1150 onboard audio and my gigabyte motherboard driven PC right there finally died. That's an LGA 1150 motherboard, which means that it's quite old at this point. About 6, 7 years old, something along the lines of that. It's a GA Z97 HD3, but that's not the point of this video. Has an onboard Realtek DAC on it, and it sounds, every motherboard with the exception of the old Dells I've had have had the onboard Realtek audio, and while they don't sound terrible, I certainly don't think that it sounds as good as that dedicated Sound Blaster right there. But mainly, let's say this video is for people that might be using something like those guys right there, and those are SteelSeries Arctis 5s, which are driven off of a proprietary USB DAC, and so for that purpose, they're more gaming oriented headphones. They sound okay. I would say personally, out of all the different gaming headphones I've heard Sony Golds, I've heard Astro A10s, which aren't really in the same price league as those, but the original, not the twos, the original HyperX Clouds, and I think that's about all in terms of the gaming headphones I've heard. I would say that SteelSeries, now I can vouch for their wireless offerings because these are wired and that's how I've always preferred it. I thought these sounded okay. They sound decent for what they are. They're gaming oriented headphones. And even when I was younger, I'm 22 now for reference, which still isn't that old, but even when I was a teenager and even when I was younger, I always understood that gaming headphones are always going to be compromised to some degree, mainly, albeit, because they have to pay for the fancy aesthetics and the microphone and the detachable cable, and not all of them have detachable cable, but you get my point. The RGB lighting, if yours have that. And I will say, for $100 out the door, which is what I paid for those 4 years ago, and those have been my daily driver for the past 4 years, and to my untrained audio ear, I would say that they sound okay. They're obviously not going to be Sennheisers, but they sound okay. Then you get yourself a pair of Sennheisers driven off a decent, and I know, get your laughs in if there's any audiophiles watching, decent source, but you can't laugh too much because even if it's a Sound Blaster, it still supports 24-bit 196 192, sorry, thousand kilohertz with a 600 ohm headphone amp with a 106 decibel SPL. Are those the best specs? Absolutely not. Do I know how these measure? Absolutely not. Although I have seen a review, a measuring a graph of a more high-end creative product, and they actually measure pretty well. Now, obviously, that doesn't vouch for these, this, but it measures okay. And it's a still massive improvement over the onboard garbage, you know, built like shit tier Realtek ALC 1150 that literally died. Sure that it's 6 years old, whatever. It's a DAC. How complicated can it be to make? Maybe I'm simplifying that. Maybe DACs are extremely complicated to make. I don't know. But it died. And it's the onboard audio, and it doesn't sound near as good as what that sounds like. And you can fight me all you want. You can say you're full of shit. It's the same. I don't care. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking by it. But basically, the whole point of this video is to give people, like me, similar to me, people that have never had the chance to experience a very reference flat pair of Sennheisers, or any headphone for that matter. People that are coming from things like that, or something that might just be fun sounding, as audiophiles would like to say, or just average or poor at best, to something that really is going to give your ears a treat. And the first impression I would say that you're going to have when you're coming from something like that guy right there, or just any, like I said, non-audiophile grade headphones that don't measure very well. Your first impression when you go to switch your source, or even if it's on the same source, and fire those guys up right there. And I would say you don't have to listen to Lossless. Lossless isn't going to get the most out of headphones. It's mainly to get the most out of your source. However, I would listen to Lossless if you got the space on your PC, on your on your hard drive, or whatever you store your music on. However, no, I agree with most people in the fact that you don't have to listen to Lossless to hear a difference between good headphones and poor or average, at best, headphones. Just for some reference, and I know stats and measurements aren't everything, as I've heard from a lot of audiophiles. And I don't consider myself an audiophile. I'm not knowledgeable enough to really be an audiophile, and I don't really have enough gear in my possession to be an audiophile, although I know that being an audiophile really has nothing to do with how much gear you have, and it's mainly just to do with how you like your music to sound. Do you appreciate how music sounds? But still, I feel like I would need at least a little bit more than these two things right here to really give an educated opinion, or consider myself a true audiophile. Not to say that people that don't have gear can't be. You can still be very knowledgeable. But anyway, the main thing that I would say that you're going to notice, and just using some specs for reference, is the THD, or total harmonic distortion, on these SteelSeries Arctis 5s right here, and this can vary with any headphone of course, is 3% 3% total harmonic distortion, which means that you're only really getting 97% of what the artist intended back. Whereas these guys right here have a THD, according to Sennheiser, of 0.05, so less than 1% distortion. So you're getting a whole 99.5% of what the artist intended, basically. And just because they're closed back as well, instead of open, not closed back, I'm sorry, open back instead of closed back like those guys are. Open back headphones tend to be have a much greater, wider sound stage. You tend to hear a little bit more, spatialness in the music. There tends to be a little bit more of an airy feel. I don't quite know the best way to describe it because, like I said, I'm not an audiophile. Um, but with something like a closed-back headphone, you generally sacrifice soundstage and fidelity. Not always. There is some really good closed-back headphones that have amazing fidelity, but in most cases, you sacrifice fidelity and wide, great open soundstage for more noise suppression of the outside world and more bass. That's generally what a closed back headphone is going to give you over an open back headphone. And I would say that if a lot of heavy bass is your thing, these 560Ss right here are not really for you. However, I'm not really a bass head. I listen to a lot of older and more progressive rock and more just general 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Bass is not something that's always been a huge priority for me. If I want a lot of bass, I'm going to buy a speaker setup or I'm going to go sit in my car and listen to music on my Bose. And, Bose is, something else that audiophiles hate, but, or at least most of them, I would say. But the Bose in my car, I can't fault it. It sounds really good. But that's topic for a different, video. Um, for example, I have some Italo disco pulled up right here. Um, Nice 50 song playlist. It just sounds absolutely amazing. It's in FLAC, of course. If I remember correctly, let's see, what's the bit rate on this album? 949 kilobits per second. I don't know if that's the same case on every song, because this is sort of a compilation album, you could say, but it's all in FLAC, which it just sounds really good. Now, the one downside to FLAC, which I sort of told you guys about, is this right here. It's not even, I don't know. So 17 albums basically, which isn't even that many albums. It's a fair amount, I guess. Good to get a nice sample size. 17 albums worth of music, and it's nearly 10 gigs. That's the one downside to FLAC that you're going to find, is just how much space it takes up. However, I say it's worth it because when you're listening to good headphones over a at least decent source, and again, I don't care what anybody says, this is better than onboard audio and it's good enough. Is it the best you can get? Is it something that's really going to maybe give you every single ounce out of those headphones? No, probably not. But for $42, that is not bad and you can't fault it, and fuck anybody that thinks otherwise. That's what I think. That's my opinion, and you can go fuck yourself if you think differently, because that's $42, okay? That's cheaper than like the cheapest FiO USB DAC I could find on Amazon. So for $42, it's good enough and it gets the job done, and I don't care what you think, okay? That's my opinion, and you're entitled to your own, but that, again, my opinion. Moving on. Like I said, is there a massive difference between 320 kilobytes per second and FLAC if you're listening to a good source, well, decent source, I'm not going to call that good, decent source in good headphones? I think that there is a noticeable difference. Is it massive? I've kind of yet to determine that. I honestly think it really depends on the music you're listening to, how well it was mastered, how well it was recorded, and just, the basics of everything. Again, I don't really consider myself an audiophile because I don't know enough. I think, however, on certain albums with certain mastering, there is a massive difference. On other albums, it's not as big of a difference. It really depends on what you're listening to and how well it was mastered. Is there a difference on headphones that are not so good or average or fun sounding, however you want to. And I know that there's fun sounding headphones that are made extremely well, that do measure a lot better than, like, let's say what those would. Like a Harman Target headphone, I guess you could call it. Critical has a lot of good measurements up. He's measured these. He's measured a ton of in-ears and a ton of headphones. Go check his website out at In-Ear Fidelity if you want to see the measurements of the HD560S, and I think you will be quite impressed. I paid less than $200 for these. I got these for $189 after tax, shipped out the door. They're normally like $200 headphones. They're still on sale on Amazon, I believe, at the link of, and I'll link them in the description of this video if you're interested. Will you enjoy these over your onboard audio? I don't know. I haven't tested them over onboard audio. I would presume that they would be okay over onboard audio, you know, not a sound blaster. They're only 120 ohm impedance. Those, something like those, are like 50. I'm not 50, 32, I think. So you can drive them on almost anything, your phone, your PC, anything, console. These are 120, which means you're starting to get to the limit where you might want to consider a DAC or an amp if you're trying to drive them off something like a smartphone. However, I have heard a lot of people say that those will be driven off of a smartphone completely fine. But if you want all this information, you can, you know, I'm sure you've already watched a ton of other videos where they've told you all this. But mainly this is just to get a reference for people that weren't an audiophile like me. What you, I think, will listen to and what you'll hear when you first fire these guys up, like I've said, is at first you're going to think it's it sounds extremely flat. You're going to think it sounds extremely weird if you're only used to headphones that sound like that. You know, fun sounding headphones that have everything boosted or a certain range in their treble boosted. However, if you keep listening to these and you give them a chance and you listen to well recorded music, high quality, even lossless, 320 will do. Hell, if you give it a chance and you keep listening, what happens is your ears will start to adjust and you'll start to hear fidelity and soundstage and just overall amazing spatialness and music that you've never heard before, because it's all going to be muffled and drowned out on a pairs of headphones like those. Or let's take Beats for example. You know, they've gotten better over the years, but bass boosted to high hell, it drowns out all the high frequencies, all the mid frequencies. You do not get that on these. These are a neutral reference sounding beast of a headphone. They are going to give you, you know, absolute equilibrium, absolute truth, if you want to call it that, to the music you listen to. And I really appreciate that because I've never had a type of headphone that has been able to do that. All the headphones I've ever had, you know, and I've had some fairly expensive headphones. Nothing is ever as expensive as these, even though these aren't really considered that expensive in the world of audiophile headphones. You know, I've heard a lot about the Hi-Fi Man Sundaras, which are really good and similar to these. A lot of Bear Dynamic products that are really good and similar to these. But I really like Sennheiser. I've heard a lot of good things about them. They've been doing this for 75 years. They have the most experience, and I would say headphones and microphones are the two things that they have the most experience in. Go with Sennheiser if you're not sure. You really can't go wrong with the HD560Ss. They're just amazing, especially if you appreciate the things in music that I appreciate, especially if you appreciate neutrality, you know, reference style. But that's about all I really have to say. They're amazing headphones. If you don't believe me, see if you can get to demo them. See if you can find any of your friends that have a pair of Sennheisers. Or good audio is something that I never really understood the importance of until I bought these headphones and that guy right there. And again, you can laugh all you want. You know, that's better than onboard audio, and I will stick by that. But this has been a quick overview on the Sennheiser HD560S and the Audiophile. And catch you guys next time. Peace out. It's been 2K Ton, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. See you later.